Chapter 1. Summer that began by accident. Summer came to the village early, with a hot sun that already in May had scorched the grass on the paths and forced the birds to seek shade in the thick crowns. In the garden behind Anna and Lina's house, everything was blooming so lushly that it seemed that every bush, every flower was trying its best to absorb every ray of the new season. The roses blossomed slowly, and the dew lingered on their petals for a long time, sparkling in the sun like tiny diamonds. Anna and Lina were inseparable from birth. They grew up like two branches of the same tree. They quarreled over trifles, but a minute later they were laughing, weaving wreaths of daisies. The morning began the same way, cold water from the well, bread with raspberry jam and running along the overgrown path to the river. They rolled over the hills, caught dragonflies, made houses in the bushes and made up their own rules for each game. In the evenings, they both climbed into the same bed, listened to their mother singing old songs behind the wall, and whispered that tomorrow they would find the most beautiful flowers in the meadow. The sisters felt like the rightful mistresses of summer. They knew every tree in the forest, every stream and every old stone on the shore. At midday, when the air above the earth trembled with heat, they hid in the shade of large oaks, watching lizards, or splashed in a shallow river, chasing tadpoles. When the wind blew in the afternoon, they raised their faces to the sky and laughed, catching the breath of warm gusts, smelling of dust and heated grasses. It became especially beautiful towards evening, when the sky began to turn peachy pink, and the garden was filled with the sense of warm greenery and herbs. The sisters wandered along the garden paths together, picking flowers, arguing about who would make the most magnificent bouquet for their mother. And when the first evening firefly lit up the sky, they began to compete to see who could catch more twinkling lights, carefully putting them in a jar, so that later they could watch how the magical dots illuminated the darkness. On such evenings, time seemed to slow down. Every rustle, every cry of a night bird, every swaying of branches in the wind seemed to be part of a big performance staged just for them. Summer promised to be endless, and the girls believed in it with all their hearts. There was no room for boredom in their world. Even the shadows of tall grass turned into fantastic creatures, and the night's starry sky into a map to countless treasures. But on one of those warm evenings, when the sun was slowly sinking behind the edge of the forest and the last birds were chirping in the treetops, they saw him for the first time. On a narrow forest path, beyond which their beloved blueberry forest began, sat a boy. He seemed older than them, but not an adult. His fair hair shone almost gold in the sunset light, and in his hands he held a small wooden knife, carefully carved from a willow branch. He was focused, but when he noticed the sisters, he raised his head and smiled so that something strange pinched in Anna and Lina's chests. The wind swayed the leaves above his head, and at that moment he seemed to them like a character from a book about knights or old fairy tales, so unreal, but so real. The girls exchanged a short glance. There was as much curiosity in it as anxiety. After all, they had never seen anyone like this boy. That evening, Anna and Lina could not sleep for a long time. Lying in the warm room, they heard the crickets calling to each other outside the window, the wind rustling the curtains, and in this rustling they seemed to hear footsteps on the path leading to their house. Each of them imagined meeting the boy again, but each secretly hoped that he would come to her. Thus began the summer that would change them forever. Chapter 2. Forest Days and First Sparks. In the morning, the sisters woke up earlier than usual. The wind carried the smell of the lake and damp grass, and even the house, warmed up overnight, was full of anticipation of something new. Anna and Lina rushed off to breakfast as soon as their mother put bowls of milk and honey on the table. They couldn't wait to find themselves on the path in the forest, where they had met the strange boy yesterday. They didn't agree on this in words, they just knew, today everything would repeat itself. The sun broke through the leaves, drawing golden paths on the ground. Each drop of dew sparkled like a tiny gem. The girls walked side by side, but even then Anna began to speed up her pace slightly in order to be the first to see Alex, and Lina noticed this and was angry, although she tried not to show it. Summer suddenly became not only a time for games, but also a field for an invisible struggle. And he was there, sitting on an old fallen tree, swinging his leg, and he smiled when he saw them. Alex looked as if he had been waiting for them for ages, and in that look they both felt that something important had begun. They went deep into the forest together. They picked blueberries, competed to find the largest berry, laughed when the blue juices left stains on their hands and clothes. Then Lina noticed that Alex often helped Anna when she got stuck in the thickets, offering her a hand or holding branches. Lina's heart was pierced by a sharp feeling she had never known before, as if she had been offended, although no one had said a word. But she tried not to show it, sang along with the birds, jumped on the roots and told funny stories that always made Alex laugh. The deeper they went into the forest, the more secluded the place became. The light here was diffused in the emerald foliage, the air was cooler, and the silence seemed thick as honey. Sometimes they stopped and simply listened to invisible birds calling to each other high in the branches. For Anna and Lina, these moments were different. One felt like a winner, the other, like a shadow nearby. For lunch, they had a picnic in a sunny clearing. Alex took apples and cookies from his backpack, and the sisters collected a small bouquet of wild flowers and decorated the center of their tablecloth with it, spread right on the grass. The wind brought the smells of resin and wild mint. They ate, shouting and laughing, but the girls' smiles were already hiding anxiety. Each furtively watched who Alex looked at more often, to whom he smiled a little warmer. After lunch, they played hide-and-seek among the tall fern bushes. Lina noticed that Alex lingered longer with Anna than with her. When Lina ran out to meet them with a triumphant cry, her joy immediately faded. They were standing too close, and even the wind seemed to whisper that something was happening between them. But instead of crying, Lina put on her brightest smile and ran on, pretending not to notice anything. In the evening, they returned to the house, tired, but full of feelings that they could not name. Someone third had appeared in their world, someone because of whom everything began to change. The night found the sisters in different beds. They both could not fall asleep for a long time, thinking about how it was possible for the heart to beat so quickly and painfully, just by remembering the same blue eyes. Chapter 3. Sweet Twilight and Bitter Shadows. The following days flowed like thick honey, in which sweetness and bitterness mixed more and more. Summer entered its golden period. The air was motionless from the heat during the day, and in the evenings it was filled with the aromas of heated grass and damp earth. The sisters with Alex walked from dawn to late sunset, forgetting about time. They looked for the most beautiful places, overgrown meadows with rustling grass up to their waists, an abandoned mill with a collapsed roof, an old boat cemetery on the shore, where the skeletons of long-rotted canoes looked like the skeletons of forgotten whales. In each of these places, something special was happening. Somewhere they held competitions to see who could walk across a stream on a log, somewhere they built a hut from branches in which they hid from the rare summer rains. But more and more often these happy moments ended in tense silence. Anna and Lina felt that something was wrong, although they themselves could not find the words to describe it. The sisters were no longer the same. Anna became hot-tempered, her laughter sounded louder than before, but jealousy was hidden behind it. Lina, on the contrary, often withdrew into herself, was silent and tried not to meet her sister's eyes. When Alex walked next to one of them, the other slowed down and looked at their backs with such an expression that it seemed like a hot thorn was tearing in her chest. One evening they had a picnic on a hill, where the wind brought the smell of hay from a neighboring field. The sun was slowly sinking into soft clouds, and the light enveloped everything in a golden glow. Alex took out his accordion and began to play a simple melody that sent shivers down his spine. Anna immediately sat closer to him, leaned on his shoulder, looking at the sunset. Lina quietly moved a little further and watched them, feeling her throat tighten from an incomprehensible insult and loneliness. Then it started to rain, light, barely noticeable, like the moist breath of the sky. Together they ran to the old barn on the edge of the forest and hid under the canopy. The rain gained strength, turning into a noisy downpour. In the semi-darkness, Alex looked at Anna for so long that Lina felt a wave rise in her chest, not exactly anger, but something strong and hot that did not allow her to breathe. When the rain died down, Alex took 3 field bells out of his pocket. He handed 2 to his sisters and kept 1 for himself. The girls accepted the flowers, but even this sweet gesture only increased the tension. Anna squeezed her bell so hard that the stem was crumpled. Lina examined hers, but could not raise her eyes to Alex or her sister. The whole summer, which began with carefree happiness, slowly turned into a survival game for 2 hearts. Each evening ended with a cold silence between the sisters' beds. In the dark room you could only hear their breathing and the rustling of the leaves outside the window. Anna lay with her eyes open, remembering Alex's laughter and his gaze, and Lina bit her lips, fighting back the tears that were coming, and whispered to herself that tomorrow she would do everything so that he would notice only her. Chapter 4. The Last Nights and the Eternal Shadow. August was slowly drawing to an end. The sun no longer rose so high, and in the evenings cool fog settled on the ground, turning the garden and forest into a white, ghostly haze. In the last days of summer, the sisters felt something was inexorably approaching, like rust slowly eating away at an old swing, or like a crack creeping across the ice on a frosty day. Anna and Lina increasingly tried to be alone with Alex, inventing excuses for each other. One forgot a book by the lake, the other went for raspberries in the distant thickets. One evening, Anna invited Alex to the abandoned attic of the mill to show how the entire lake could be seen from there in the moonlight. Lina looked for them for a long time that evening, until she heard their laughter coming from above. In that laughter she thought she heard a secret that she did not share. Their quarrels became more and more acute. When Alex was around, they tried to smile and joke, but as soon as he went to get water or disappeared from sight for a minute, a silence hung between them, sharper than a knife. Lina accused Anna of stealing her summer. Anna mocked Lina, calling her a little crybaby. These words hurt both of them, but they could no longer stop. On the last day of August, the three of them decided to go to the lake for the last time. The air was clear and ringing, as it happens only before the change of seasons. On the way, they hardly spoke. Each step was heavy, as if their legs were tangled in the invisible threads of their own thoughts. Alex sometimes walked with one of the sisters, then slowed down to wait for the other, but an expression of fatigue and anxiety appeared on his face more and more often. On the shore they were building a raft from old boards and ropes, trying to revive the memories of the first days of summer. But the joy seemed distant, like the light of a dying sunset. That evening the sun set especially slowly, painting the sky in crimson and violet tones. The lake froze like a mirror, reflecting the dying day. When the raft was ready, the three of them sailed away from the shore. Anna and Lina sat on different sides of Alex. The silence was ringing. Time seemed to have stopped, only the slight swaying of the water and the rustle of the reeds reminded that the world was still breathing. And then Alex, looking at them with a seriousness inappropriate for a child's face, took 2 small white pebbles from his pocket, smooth as a tear. He handed them to his sisters, and his voice sounded quiet and muffled. "Thank you for this summer. It was the happiest time of my life, and probably the last." Alex's face remained calm, but his eyes were full of sadness. He smiled at both of them, the way people smile in farewell dreams, and suddenly, without a sound, stepped over the edge of the raft into the black water. It closed over his head, leaving not even a circle on the surface. The sisters screamed, rushed to the edge of the raft, but only the dark bottom of the lake looked at them like a silent abyss. They got out onto the shore with difficulty, trembling with horror and cold. Night covered the forest so quickly that every bush and trunk seemed like living shadows. The sisters sat on the shore for a long time, pressing cold, wet pebbles to each other, a reminder of the boy with eyes the color of the summer sky. They were silent at home. At night, Anna and Lina lay in the same bed, for the first time in a long time, and could not sleep. The moon lit up their faces, where the same thought was frozen. Summer was over, but with it, something that would never return. And in their palms, the white stones were cold, an eternal reminder that the first feeling can be beautiful and scary.